They thought it would end like it always does. A headline, a body, a message. Not here, not this time. Keith Ball had spent years shoulder to shoulder with the most feared men in the biker world. Hell's Angels, Satan's slaves, outlaws, both in title and temperament. He wasn't just a patched member, he was visible, connected. Editor of Easy Rider, co-founder of ABATE, the kind of man who could call a meeting and have every seat filled. Men like that don't just walk away. Not without consequence. But Keith did. No fist fights in a clubhouse, no vote, no funeral, just space. One day he was in the room, the next he wasn't. And somehow, that silence said more than 1,000 gunshots ever could. But you don't understand that part until you understand him. Because Keith Ball was never chasing the patch. He was chasing the machine. It started small, not with chrome, not with noise, just a quiet kid in Southern California, 14 years old, staring down a used Honda Super Cub. The neighbor wanted to sell. Keith wanted to ride. Simple enough. Until he asked his dad. The answer was short, brutal.
And then when I was 14, the kid next door was selling his Honda 55 Super Cub. And I went to my dad and I said, I'm thinking about buying this. And he said, I hate bikes and I hate bikers.
Then came the story. How a guy on a Triumph kept buzzing past his truck every morning on the way to work.
So my dad drove this little Datsun pickup truck to work every day. He worked in the oil fields. He managed a machine shop. And he drove the same way to work every day, drove the same way home. So one time he's driving to work and a guy goes by on a motorcycle. And he said that it was like this guy had just got this new Triumph and buzzed by him, you know. And he said that as the weeks went along, the guy went faster and faster, and he started to change. The guy started to wear a leather jacket. He started to grow his hair out. He grew a beard. Well, one day he goes buzzing by my dad, and he cuts in front of him and goes down. So my dad pulls over, and he gets out of his little Datsun pickup truck, and he walks up to the guy and he says, "Are you okay?" And the guy says, "Yeah, I think I am." He says, "Well, it serves you right, you son of a bitch." So that's how my dad felt about bikers, bikes.
That was Keith's introduction to biker life. No lectures, no blessings. Just a rule. You're on your own.
So when I went to him, he said, my code is that I'm not going to help you with a bike. I'm not going to pay for your insurance. Not going to help you with a loan or any of that kind of stuff. You're on your own.
So Keith did what most don't. He still bought the bike, paid the insurance, and taught himself. From there, the story stops looking like rebellion and starts looking like obsession. At 18, Keith joined the Navy, went to Vietnam, and spent years in the noise. When he came back, everything felt different. Except the bikes.
That first bike, I only had it for a little bit, and then I joined the service when I was 18 and graduated from high school, and went to electronics school and went to Vietnam, and I bought a '69 Sportster at the time in 1969. It was brand new.
He picked up a '69 Sportster, extended the front and modified the frame. Then he looked at a photo of himself on it, this towering guy on a machine that suddenly looked too small.
Well, I've got kind of a funny story. So I had this Sportster, and I fixed it up and extended the front end and did a few things, and my wife at the time came out, and I was sitting on it, and she took my picture. You know, it was a little Polaroid. So she handed me the picture, and I looked at the picture and I went, "Oh my God." I said, I got to get rid of this, you know, it's too small. Yeah. And so I immediately did, and then bought a '66 Long Beach police bike. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
one of the ones, was it still black and white with all the gear, or was it all stripped down already?
No, it was somewhat stripped down and it had been painted, but it still had a tank shift.
It wasn't for show. It was for the road. From there, he started flipping old LAPD bikes, tearing them down, rebuilding them in a single-car garage and selling them one by one. What he lacked in money, he made up for in precision. Then came Bob George, the kind of mentor who doesn't talk much but teaches everything.
And Bob George is the guy who built the Easy Rider Streamliner. And he started teaching me how to build engines. And here I am, like 21 or something like that, and I'm dragging a Sun and Hone into my little single car garage. And, I'm trying to rebuild engines, So I started doing that, and I rebuilt a few engines.
Before long, Keith wasn't just riding machines. He was creating them. And in the process, something else was forming too. Not a club, not yet, but a presence, a voice. And soon enough, it would reach beyond garages and workshops, straight into the most guarded rooms in outlaw America. Hey brothers, tired of YouTube's BS and censorship? It's time to break free. That's why I've shifted gears to Patreon, where I can bring you the raw, uncensored content you crave. Join my Patreon crew and get an insane package deal. Exclusive early access to all videos, days before YouTube, 100% ad-free viewing experience, uncensored, no-holds-barred community discussions, double the content, 2 killer videos every single week, VIP access, direct interaction with yours truly, inside scoop, exclusive biker world updates you won't find anywhere else. Ready to join the elite? Hit that Patreon link now. Your support doesn't just keep us rolling. It fuels a revolution of uncensored, unrestricted content. Join now and unlock a world of exclusive benefits. There's a kind of man the club doesn't know what to do with. The one who listens more than he speaks. The one who's useful without being loud. The one who can walk into 3 different rooms and leave each one with more trust than he came in with. That was Keith.
He's a big man. He was like 6'4". His bike was like a tractor, man. It was heavy duty, built for the road. Him and I put a lot of miles on together. I don't ever remember him breaking down.
By the time he patched into the Los Angeles chapter, he already had something most men in the life never get: reach. Not just among bikers, but in the courts, in the magazines, in the politics shaping their future.
The mid-'70s, Keith and I both drifted to the Los Angeles Hells Angels, and in the mid-'70s, we both became Los Angeles members. And I just talked about my best memory of a party was that Saint Slave party. And I'll tell you, the slaves didn't like a lot of people, and they didn't invite a lot of people to interact with them direct. Like, they were kind of like the sultans of San Fernando Valley. And, they would have a party, or they would show up, a lot of people would come. But to be invited by them was, a special treat. And I know the slaves really liked Keith a lot. They had a lot of positive things to say about him.
He was riding with the Angels, yes. But he was also writing for Easy Rider, the most read motorcycle magazine in America. He was building bikes that ran better than anything rolling out of local garages and through ABATE. He was helping bikers fight helmet laws and government oversight they didn't even understand yet.
Keith was on the ground for ABATE, and there's some debate about what it stands for: Brotherhood Against Totalitarian Acts, American Bikers Towards Education. It's kind of segued through the years, and it has different meanings. But I'll tell you something about Keith. He worked at Easy Rider magazine with Lou Kimsey, and he helped start that ABATE deal in 1972.
He never positioned himself above the club. He just kept moving, like someone who didn't need to ask permission. And in the outlaw world, that makes people nervous. Not all at once. It starts in the margins. A look that lingers. A meeting where your name comes up, but no one wants to say what was said. A ride where someone who used to nod doesn't. That's how it begins. Then came the swap meet. Somewhere in the chaos, fists flew between angels and Mongols. Tables flipped, knives out. One of those fights that starts with a stare and ends with sirens.
Then I saw another danger coming, and that was Sonny had put a target on his back along with Oakland, and he was dragging Oakland along with him. Sonny blamed Keith for the first fight that we had with the Mongols. I don't really see it that way. That fight was brewing. It was going to happen. It was a fist fight in there. Keith was there. Him and I were fighting side by side.
Sonny Barger, founder, strategist, godfather of the modern Hells Angels, didn't like what Keith represented.
He was an editor of Easy Rider. He had an open line of communication to clubs all over the world. And, I think Sonny felt a little threatened by him. And, the ironic thing is Keith had done more things for positive things for the outlaw lifestyle than he'd ever been given credit for back then, and maybe even now. Like I said, he had his whole hand, his whole on the pulse of the outlaw motorcycle movement.
No accusations were made, not formally. But the weight of suggestion started to hang. People who used to ask for advice stopped showing up. People who used to talk shop now stayed quiet. Keith had entered the club through trust, and now, without warning, that trust was turning stale. He hadn't broken a rule, hadn't crossed a line, but maybe that was the problem. Because in a place built on control, what do you do with a man who doesn't need yours? He saw it coming before anyone said a word. Not because someone warned him, and not because he feared what was waiting, but because Keith had spent years in the middle of things, and he knew when the middle started shifting. People still smiled, still nodded, still called him brother. But the tone changed. The energy in the room moved a half step to the side. It's never obvious at first. You just notice fewer calls, shorter conversations, and the way certain names don't come up around you anymore. By then, he'd already stopped wearing the patch daily. Not out of disrespect, just instinct. He was spending more time in the garage, tuning salt bikes for Bonneville, writing, lobbying for riders' rights in D.C., riding with a different kind of mission. And in that space, things became clear. There was no point clinging to something that no longer fit, not because it turned on him, but because it tightened in ways it didn't used to. Keith didn't need a confrontation to make sense of it. He didn't need to wait for it to get ugly. That was the advantage of being grounded, of having something beyond the club. He never made a speech, never sent a message. He just didn't show up one day, and then the next, and then. That was it.
But, Sonny's jealousy could be very dangerous at times. And, I had people, as I started getting more and more notoriety, I had several people warn me, don't get bigger than the man himself because he doesn't like it. And, along with Old Man John and Keith, we had a private conversation, and Keith stepped aside. He had a lot of responsibilities at the magazine. I never saw Keith as running away from anything. And I'll tell you, I'm really glad he did what he did, because I don't know what would have transpired, because Sonny continued to talk shit about him. Later, he directed all of his anger at me. I took Keith off the hook, but Keith's a good guy.
It's not that they forgot him. They didn't. It's that when a man steps away cleanly, with no scandal, no betrayal, and no plea for attention, there's not much left to say. He never burned a bridge, but he didn't wait around to see if anyone else would. And somehow that choice, the quiet, calculated, unspoken exit, became the thing no one else had pulled off. Not because he was clever, but because he knew when a room stopped being his. He didn't disappear. He just stopped waiting for anyone's permission. While others measured legacy and loyalty to the patch, Keith kept building, kept writing. But now, it was on his terms. Deadwood, South Dakota. That's where he found his rhythm again. He set up shop, surrounded by tools, photos, old tanks, rare engines, a museum in the shape of a workshop, and every part of it had purpose. He was still chasing performance, still tweaking machines, still showing up at Bonneville. 4 land speed records, all earned. The Salt Torpedo was his latest obsession, a streamliner trike built from scratch. And when he wasn't building, he was fighting. Not fists, laws. Through groups like the Motorcycle Riders Foundation, he stood up for the people still rolling through back roads with grease on their knuckles. Helmet law pushbacks, EPA overreach, right to repair legislation. Keith had left the club, but not the community. He joined the board at the Sturgis Motorcycle Museum, started mentoring builders, writing, still publishing under his own banner, bikernet.com, a digital garage filled with stories, tech, culture, and the kind of gritty insights you only get from someone who's been there and stayed sharp.
But Keith's a good guy. He's living out towards the Sturgis area, and I think you go to Sturgis, you probably run into him.
And the wild part? The respect never stopped. Even the old school 1%ers, the ones who never forgot a face, still nodded when his name came up. Not because he stayed patched in, but because he never turned his back on the road.
I've got a guest here today that has a list of accomplishments in the motorcycle world that few can rival. To name a few, in 2006, he was indicted into the Motorcycle Hall of Fame at Sturgis. In 2006, he was Cycle Source Magazine's Man of the Year. In 2016, he was Cycle Source Magazine Hall of Fame. In 2016, he was inducted into the Las Vegas Motorcycle Hall of Fame. In 2016, he received the Motorcycle Riders Foundation Aftermarket Award. Let's see, I got another page here. In 2017, he received the Sturgis Buffalo Chip Moxie Award for serving 21 years in business supporting the motorcycle industry. In 2018, he was inducted into the Motorcycle Riders Foundation Freedom Riders Hall of Fame. In 2023, he received the Thomas Paine Award from the Motorcycle Riders Foundation. He's a holder of 4 motorcycle land speed records. He was awarded the Silver Spoke Award by the National Coalition of Motorcyclists not once but twice.
He just took a different route. He's not the loudest, not the flashiest. But in a world where most legacies die in the rear view, Keith keeps pulling ahead, not through survival, through presence.